I buried my brother 42 years ago. His name was Thomas Tommy, as we all called him. He was 19 when the Greyhound bus he was on went off the Coquihalla Highway during a brutal snowstorm in January of 1983. They told me 17 passengers died that night. Tommy was one of them. I identified his body at the morgue in Hope, British Columbia. I was 23 years old, and I had to tell our mother that her youngest son was gone. Last Tuesday, my phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was 604 Vancouver. I almost didn't answer. By 65, you learn that nothing good ever comes from phone calls at that hour. But something made me reach for it. Maybe it was the same instinct that used to wake me whenever Tommy had nightmares as a kid, Don. I answered. A voice said, "David? Is this David?" I sat up in bed, my heart suddenly pounding against my ribs. The voice sounded uncertain, like someone who hadn't spoken in a very long time. But beneath that roughness, there was something that made my blood run cold. "Who is this?" I asked. There was heavy, labored breathing on the other end. "It's me," the voice said. "It's Tommy." The phone slipped from my hands. They were shaking so badly I could barely pick it up again. When I did, the line was still open. I could hear him breathing. "This isn't funny," I said, my voice cracking. "Whoever you are, this is sick. My brother died 42 years ago." "I know," the voice said. "I know how long it's been. I just figured out who I am. I found something, a newspaper clipping about the bus crash. There's a picture of me, but the name under it says Thomas Carr. That's me, isn't it? I'm Thomas Carr." I couldn't breathe. The room started spinning. "Where are you?" I finally managed to ask. "I don't really know," he said. "A place called the Downtown East Side. Someone told me that's what it's called. I think I live in a shelter on East Hastings Street. I'd been here a long time. I don't remember how I got here. I don't remember anything before about 15 years ago. I just remember waking up in a hospital. They said I'd been found on the street with no ID. I couldn't even tell them my name. My mind was racing. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of scam, someone who had found Tommy's name somewhere and decided to torture me with it. "What do you remember?" I asked, testing him. Nothing clear. Just feelings. Sometimes I dream about snow, about being cold, about people screaming. And sometimes I dream about a house with a blue door. And someone used to make pancakes with blueberries. Every Sunday. The tears hit me, then hot and sudden. I remembered that house, that blue door. I remembered Mom making those pancakes every single Sunday without fail. And Tommy always ate twice as many as anyone else. "What do you look like?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Old," he said. There was sadness in his voice. "Really old. My face is, I don't know how to describe it. Weathered, I guess. I've lived rough for a long time. But I found that picture in the newspaper from the accident. And even though it's 42 years old, I can see myself in it. We have the same eyes." "Tommy had a scar," I said, "on his left forearm, from when he fell off his bike when he was 7. 12 stitches. There was a long pause. "I have a scar on my left forearm," he said. "It's old. Really old. I never knew where it came from." I was crying openly now, in a way I hadn't since the day we buried him. "Give me your address," I said. "I'm coming to get you." "I don't think you should," he said quietly. "I don't think I'm the person you remember. I don't remember being him. I'm just someone who's been on the streets longer than I can recall. I'd probably smell bad. I'd probably look scary. I just wanted the call because I thought someone should know that maybe I didn't die in that crash. That maybe there was a mistake. Tell me where you are," I said firmly. "Right now. He gave me the address of a shelter on East Hastings. I wrote it down with shaking hands. It was a 7-hour drive from Kelowna to Vancouver, longer if the roads were bad. I glanced at the clock. It was 2:15 a.m. Stay there, I said. Don't go anywhere. I'm leaving right now. I'll be there by noon at the latest. Do you understand? Don't leave. Okay, he said softly. Okay, David, I'll wait. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness of my bedroom for maybe 30 seconds, trying to process what had just happened. Then my body moved on its own, pulling on clothes, grabbing my wallet and keys. My wife, Sarah, stirred in bed. David, what's wrong? I have to go to Vancouver, I said. My voice sounded strange and distant. Now? At 2 in the morning? What happened? I looked at her. This woman I'd been married to for 38 years, and I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell someone that the brother you buried 4 decades ago just called you on the phone? I'll explain later, I said. I have to go. I'm sorry. I was out the door before she could ask anything else. The drive to Vancouver was the longest 7 hours of my life. I kept the radio off. I couldn't stand the noise. My mind bounced between possibilities and impossibilities. Part of me was certain this was a cruel hoax. Another part, the part that had never fully accepted that my little brother was gone, was screaming that it was real. I thought about the day in the morgue. I was barely more than a kid myself when they pulled back the sheet. His face had been battered and swollen from the crash. The body had been in the cold for 12 hours before they recovered it. There was a deep gash across the forehead, bruising everywhere. But I had looked at the shape of the face, the color of the hair, the build of the body, and I had said, yes, that's my brother. That's Thomas Carr. What if I had been wrong? The thought made me feel physically sick. Because if I was wrong, then Tommy had been alive all this time, alive and suffering, alone, not knowing who he was. While I had moved on. While I had married Sarah, had kids, built a career, celebrated birthdays and Christmases and anniversaries. While Mom had died 10 years ago, still grieving her youngest son, I pressed harder on the accelerator. I reached Vancouver at 11:30 in the morning. The downtown east side was exactly as bad as I had heard, maybe worse. Boarded up buildings. People slumped in doorways. Needles on the sidewalk. This was where my brother had been living. I found the shelter on East Hastings. It was a low, gray building that looked like it had been there forever. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled like industrial cleaner, failing to mask the scent of too many unwashed bodies in too small a space. Woman sat behind a desk near the entrance. She looked up as I stepped in. Can I help you? I'm looking for someone, I said. He might not remember his name, but he called me early this morning. He would have asked to use a phone around 2 a.m. She studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Tommy. Yeah, I remember. He was pretty worked up. Asked to use the phone, said it was an emergency. Sweet guy. He's been coming here on and off for about 8 years. Keeps to himself mostly. Is he here now? Check the common room. Through there. She pointed to a door on the left. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought I might collapse. The common room was filled with mismatched chairs and tables. A television murmured in the corner. About a dozen people sat scattered around. Most of them looked up as I entered, eyes wary, and then I saw him. He sat alone at a table near the window, his back to me. His gray hair was longer than it should have been, pulled into a loose ponytail. He wore a flannel shirt that had seen better days. His shoulders were hunched, like he was trying to make himself smaller. I walked toward him slowly. My legs didn't feel real. Tommy, I said. He turned around. The face that looked back at me was nothing like the boy I remembered. This man was weathered and worn, with deep lines etched around his eyes and mouth. His skin was darkened from years of exposure to the elements. A scar ran across his left cheek, one that hadn't been there before. And yet, it was him. He looked at least 70, not 61. But the eyes, God, the eyes were the same. Brown with flecks of gold, exactly like our father's, exactly like Tommy's. "David," he said, and his voice cracked. I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, this man who might be my brother. This ghost from 42 years ago. He stood up slowly, like his joints hurt. He was thinner than Tommy had been, and somehow shorter too, though maybe that was just the way he carried himself. But when he looked at me, there was something in his expression that made my breath catch. "You came," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "Show me your arm," I said. My voice came out harsh and demanding. "Your left one." He hesitated, then slowly rolled up his sleeve. There, running along his forearm, was a scar, old and faded, but unmistakable. About 4 inches long. Exactly where Tommy's scar had always been. My knees went weak. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. I think I need to sit down." He pulled out a chair for me, and I collapsed into it. He sat back across from me, watching carefully, like I might bolt at any moment. "Tell me about the bus crash," I said. "Tell me what you remember." "I don't remember the crash itself," he said slowly, "but I have nightmares. Always the same. I'm on a bus and it's snowing. The driver is trying to slow down, but we're sliding. Then people start screaming. It's so cold. So cold I think I might die from it. And then nothing. Just darkness for a long time." He rubbed his face with both hands. "The next clear memory I have is waking up in a hospital. A nurse told me they brought me in from the street. I'd been unconscious. They said I'd been beaten and robbed. But I didn't remember that either. I didn't remember anything. Not my name. Not where I was from. Nothing. They kept me for 3 days. Ran tests, but they couldn't find anything physically wrong with me beyond some old injuries. Head trauma, they said. Possibly from years ago. What year was this?" I asked. 2010, he said. "February, I think." I didn't even know what year it was. I had to ask. My mind was spinning. 2010. 15 years after the crash. What happened in those 15 years? I asked. "Before that, you really don't remember anything?" "Sometimes I get flashes," he said. "Little pieces that don't make sense. I remember being cold a lot. Living rough somewhere. Maybe in the mountains. I think I remember working manual labor construction, maybe getting paid in cash. But it's all foggy, like trying to remember a dream." He looked down at his hands. They were scarred and calloused, the hands of someone who had worked brutally hard. For a long time. "I didn't even try to remember," he said quietly. "I just survived day to day. Found shelters when I could, slept outside when I couldn't. There are gaps in my memory, even from the last 15 years. Sometimes weeks would pass and I couldn't account for them. The doctors at the free clinic said I might have some kind of dissociative disorder, probably from trauma." "When did you start trying to remember?" I asked. "About 6 months ago," he said. "I met a woman at the shelter, a volunteer. She was sorting old newspapers for recycling and showed me one from January 1983. She said, 'Can you believe this was 40 years ago?' And something about that date made me feel strange, like it meant something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a carefully folded piece of newspaper, yellowed with age. He unfolded it gently, like it might fall apart, and slid it across the table. It was a front-page article, 17 dead in highway disaster. And there, in a small grid of victim photos, was Tommy's face, young, smiling. A high school graduation photo Mom had given to the paper. "I stared at that picture for a long time," he said. "And something clicked. I knew that face not from a mirror. I don't look like that anymore. but I knew it from somewhere deep inside. And the name underneath? Thomas Carr? I kept saying it over and over. Thomas. Tommy. And it felt right. It felt like my name. I just stared at the clipping, my brother's young face smiling back at me. I started looking for more information, he continued. There's a library near here. The librarian helped me search old records. I found the obituary. I found the list of surviving family members. Your name was there. David Carr, brother. And there was an address in Kelowna. It took me 3 months to work up the courage to call. I didn't know if you'd still be there. I didn't know if you believe me. I'm not sure I do believe you, I said. The words came out harsher than I meant them to. Because if you're Tommy, then I identified the wrong body. I told our mother the wrong son was dead. Do you understand what that means? He flinched but nodded. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine what this is like for you. Mom's dead, I said, my voice breaking. She died 10 years ago. She spent 32 years thinking you were gone. She never got over it. And if you're really Tommy, then she died not knowing you were alive. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't care who saw. The man across from me, Tommy, maybe was crying too. Silent tears ran down his weathered cheeks. I'm sorry, he whispered again. I'm so sorry. We sat there in that shelter common room. 2 old men crying while people walked past and pretended not to notice. Finally, I wiped my face with my sleeve and looked at him. We need a DNA test, I said. That's the only way to know for sure. He nodded. Okay, yes, I want to know too. I need to know. I pulled out my phone and searched. There was a private lab in downtown Vancouver that could do same-day testing expensive, but results in 48 hours. I made an appointment for 3 o'clock that afternoon. Come on, I said, standing up. Let's go get this done. He stood too, moving stiffly. As we walked out of the shelter, I noticed again how much shorter he was than me now. Tommy had nearly been my height once. This man was at least 3 inches shorter, but years of malnutrition and living rough could do that to a body. We drove to the lab in silence. I kept glancing at him in the passenger seat, trying to find my little brother in this weathered stranger. Sometimes I saw it in the curve of his ear, in the way he rubbed his thumb against his fingers when he was nervous, just like Tommy used to. Other times, he looked like a total stranger. The DNA test was simple. Cheek swabs, paperwork, payment. The results will be ready in 48 hours. The technician said, as we stepped back out onto the sidewalk, reality hit me. Where are you staying tonight? I asked. The shelter, I guess. I looked at him, at this man who might be my brother, standing there in worn-out clothes and broken-down shoes. I couldn't do it. Come on, I said. I'm getting a hotel. You're staying with me. You don't have to, I know. Come on. I found a hotel near Stanley Park. Got a room with 2 beds. The desk clerk gave us a look-me in clean clothes, him looking like he'd just stepped off the street, but I didn't care. I paid cash and took the key. In the room. I ordered pizza while he took a shower. He stayed in there almost 45 minutes. When he finally came out, his hair was wet and clean, slicked back from his face. He'd shaved off his patchy beard, and suddenly I could see it much more clearly, the shape of his face, the set of his jaw. Tommy's jaw. We ate pizza in near silence, the TV murmuring in the background. Thank you, he said softly, for this, for not just, for believing me enough to try. I haven't decided what I believe yet, I said, but I need to know. He nodded. Can I ask you something? What? What was I like before? When I was Tommy, the question hit me like a punch to the chest. I set my slice down and leaned back against the headboard. You were good, I said quietly. Really good. You were kind. You brought home stray cats. You cried when you saw roadkill. You wanted to be a veterinarian. You were starting college in Vancouver that fall. You were so excited about it. Tears filled his eyes again. You were funny, I continued. You made Mom laugh even on her worst days. And you were brave. When Dad left, you were only 12, but you told me we'd be okay. You said we'd take care of Mom together. And we did. I wish I could remember, he whispered. I wish I could remember being that person. Maybe you will, I said gently. Maybe when you finally know who you are, it'll come back. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. That night, I lay awake listening to him breathe in the bed beside mine, slow, deep breaths. The breathing of someone who had finally found a safe place to sleep. I thought about calling Sarah, but I didn't know how to explain something like this over the phone. So I sent a text instead. I'm okay. I'll explain everything when I get home. I love you, she replied immediately. Be safe. The next day, we didn't talk much. We ate breakfast at a small diner. I watched him eat like someone who hadn't had a real meal in months, which he probably hadn't. Then we walked through Stanley Park. It felt important not to just sit in the hotel room waiting for the phone to ring as we walked. He told me more about his life on the streets, the shelters, the winters that nearly killed him, the day labor jobs that paid in cash, the times he'd been robbed, beaten, arrested for loitering, the constant fog in his mind, the feeling of being lost inside his own life. I always felt like I was waiting for something, he said as we stood by the water. Like there was somewhere I was supposed to be, something I was meant to do, but I could never remember what it was. The phone rang at 2:30 on Thursday afternoon. We were back in the hotel room. I had already checked out, planning to drive home, but I delayed leaving until we got the call. I answered on the second ring. Hello, Mr. Carr. This is Sarah Chun from the Vancouver DNA lab. I'm calling with your results. My hand was shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. The man sitting across from me, Tommy. Maybe Tommy watched me with wide, terrified eyes. Yes, I said. This is David Carr. The results of your DNA comparison test are conclusive, she said. The probability of siblingship between you and the second party is 99.97%. In other words, Mr. Carr, you are biological brothers. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the bed. You're certain? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Yes, sir. These results are definitive. Would you like me to email you the full report? Yes, please. I gave her my email, thanked her, and hung up. Slowly, I looked at him at my brother who I had buried 42 years ago. My brother who had been alive this whole time. It's you, I whispered. You're really Tommy. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I'm Tommy, he repeated, like he was trying to convince himself. I'm Thomas Carr. Then we were both crying again. This time, I crossed the space between us and pulled him into my arms. He felt so thin, so fragile. But he was real, alive. We held on to each other for a long time. When I finally pulled back, I said, we need to figure out what happened. How you survived. Where you've been all these years. I know someone who might help, Tommy said. There's a doctor at the free clinic, Dr. Patricia Walsh. She's been helping me. She specializes in trauma. We went to see Dr. Walsh that afternoon. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and the calm patience of someone who'd heard every story imaginable. I told her everything: the crash, the misidentification, the phone call, the DNA test. She listened without interrupting, taking careful notes. When I finished, she said, Tommy, would you allow me to examine you? He nodded. She conducted a thorough physical exam. paying special attention to old scars and healed fractures. She ran a light over his eyes, tested his reflexes, and gently felt along the back of his skull. "You have extensive evidence of old trauma," she said. "Multiple healed fractures, ribs, left arm, right ankle. Significant scarring on your torso and back. And here," she added, touching the back of his head carefully, "there's a depression consistent with a severe impact injury. From the bus crash?" I asked. "Possibly. But here's what I believe happened," she said gently. "I think Tommy survived the initial crash, but was badly injured. He likely suffered a severe head injury and lost consciousness in the chaos, the snow, the darkness. It's possible he was thrown from the bus." She paused. "The survivors described complete chaos. Poor visibility. In all that confusion, I believe Tommy ended up separated from the main wreckage, possibly buried in snow. The body you identified, David, was likely another passenger with a similar build and age. Given the condition of the bodies and your emotional state at the time, the mistake is completely understandable." My stomach turned. I knew she was right. "So what happened to him?" I asked. "I believe someone found him," she said quietly. "Possibly a trucker. Or someone traveling that highway. Someone who didn't take him to a hospital, either, because they were involved in illegal activity or because they saw an opportunity. A young man with no memory, no ID. Easy to exploit. You're saying someone kept him?" I whispered. "I believe someone used him," she said. "Illegal logging, drug operations, off-the-books construction. These places use workers who won't ask questions and won't go to authorities, especially workers who don't even know who they are." Tommy stared at the floor, his hands clenched tightly together. "That would explain the memory gaps," Dr. Walsh continued. "Years of untreated head trauma, likely additional injuries, malnutrition, possible substance use as a coping mechanism. The brain protects itself by shutting down. The dissociation you describe is a classic trauma response." "So around 2010, I said slowly, "he was either abandoned or escaped." "Yes," she said. "And after all those years of labor, his body likely couldn't take much more. So he was dumped in Vancouver. Then he survived on the streets for another 15 years. While I lived my life. While I could have been looking for him. You couldn't have known," Tommy said softly. "You thought I was dead." Dr. Walsh looked at me gently. "David, your brother is genetically the same person. But he's not the same man he was at 19. He has survived things most people never will. He is Tommy, but he is also someone new." I looked at him, at the gray in his hair, the deep lines on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes. She was right. This wasn't the boy I lost in 1983. This was a survivor. "What do we do now?" I asked. "I recommend intensive trauma therapy," she said, "and possibly family counseling. This will be a long rebuilding process for both of you." That evening, as the streets of the downtown east side came alive, we stood on the sidewalk outside the clinic. "Come home with me," I said. "Come to Kelowna. Stay with Sarah and me. We'll figure this out together." Fear flickered across his face. "I don't know how to be part of a family anymore." "Then we'll learn together," I said. After a long pause, he nodded. "Okay, I'll try." We drove back the next morning. The 7-hour drive felt different this time. Quiet, peaceful. When we arrived, Sarah was waiting on the porch. She looked at Tommy for a long moment, then opened her arms. "Welcome home, Tommy." He hesitated, then broke down in her arms. "That was 3 months ago. It hasn't been easy. Tommy still has nightmares. Loud noises overwhelm him. Being indoors too long makes him panic. He goes to therapy twice a week. But he's remembering small things. The taste of Mom's blueberry pancakes. The smell of our house in summer. Last week, He remembered the bike I bought him when he was 8. I'm starting to feel like him again, he told me one evening. Or maybe like someone new who includes him. My kids have met him. My grandson thinks Tommy is his best friend. We still haven't decided what to do about the gravestone with his name on it. There's no rush out last week. Tommy got a part-time job at a garden center. He comes home with dirt under his nails and stories about customers. He's learning how to live again, and I'm learning too. I spent 42 years grieving my brother, and now he's here. I still grieve the boy he was, the life he should have had. And I ache knowing Mom never got to see him again. But he survived, against all odds. And that matters most. Sometimes late at night, we sit on the deck and watch the stars. Do you think Mom knows? He asked recently. I think she does, I said. I think she's been watching over you this whole time. He smiled, still rare, but more frequent now. I'm glad you answered the phone, he said. So am I replied, because my brother came back from the dead, and that will always be a miracle.